I'm better than 99% of the people that I step in the ring with.
Welcome to the Tristen Law Show, where I introduce you to the personalities in and out of the pro wrestling ring. The unique part is you don't have to be a pro wrestling fan to enjoy this podcast. If it's your first time here, I'm your host, Tristen Law, and welcome to another episode of the Tristen Law Show. Man, we're doing so good on YouTube. If you don't want to just hear my voice, head on over to TristenLawShow.com and click the YouTube logo, and you can actually watch the Tristen Law Show. The episodes drop the same exact time every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern on YouTube, TristenLawShow.com, and wherever you find a podcast. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Beautiful Buddy Tomas. If you don't know who that guy is, who that kid is, you got to listen to this podcast. Beautiful Buddy Tomas falls into a very special category on the Tristen Law Show. He is the first guest to have a family member on the Tristen Law Show. His dad is ring announcer Matt Lynch from season 1, episode 17. Check that out. And if you're not doing anything this weekend, Friday night, January 28th, 2022, myself and Beautiful Buddy Tomas, we will be wrestling for a fundraiser for the Minnesink Youth Football Program. And it's going to be 10 Baker Street in Otisville, New York. It's going to be at the town of Mount Hope Youth Center. Tickets are $15 in advance and $20 at the door. You're going to see myself and my tag team partner, Prince Akhenaten, defend our ECPW Tag Team Championships against Captain Emmett Payne and Big Bad Blake. And you're also going to see Beautiful Buddy Tomas take on Attilio April. I expect to see you there because the money goes to a good cause. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Beautiful Buddy Tomas. Next guest is pro wrestler, my protege, and my really good friend. From Southampton, New York, I'd like to welcome Beautiful Buddy Tomas to the Tristen Law Show. Buddy, how's it going?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. You know, you've been making your rounds in the pro wrestling community, and I think it's about time that you get on here and let everybody know who you are. Dude, tell everybody how old you are, because I don't think people will believe it. How old are you?
I am only 19 years old.
19 years old, and this guy has probably had more matches than most people have had in years, in just this year alone. So, like, what's been your experience running around on the indies, on the independent wrestling scene for the past year?
It's been a lot of fun. I mean, I've gone as far as Pennsylvania, and then as far out in New York, Long Island. So it's been a lot of traveling within like maybe 2-3 hours, but nothing too crazy. But it's been a lot of fun.
Good, and I'm sure that the fun is only picking up for you. But your dad, Matt Lynch, he was on a previous episode in season 1 of the Tristen Law Show, and we both know he's a huge pro wrestling fan. Growing up, what were your earliest pro wrestling memories? And I'm sure most of them were with him.
Yes. So every Saturday morning, it would kind of like become like our thing. As soon as I would wake up, it would be like 9 o'clock, and I'd go in and we'd sit in my parents' room and we'd watch all the wrestling from the week. So we'd start off with Raw and then go to Impact and then go to watch SmackDown in it. We'd watch it from probably like 9 to like 12, fast forward through the parts that like I wasn't interested in or didn't want to see, but we'd watch wrestling every Saturday morning, and that's when I would really get to watch it.
So what was the moment that you realized that you were kind of like hooked to this thing?
It's something that I just remember for as long as I like can remember, is just wrestling. Like it's like part of my everyday routine. So for me, it's just always been there. So I don't know what it's like without it.
So as a wrestling fan, because I know that we're all wrestling fans first, because that's how some of us got bamboozled to want to get into the pro wrestling ring. What was the most important thing to you?
I just always wanted to like be there and just like be around the people. There were times where like maybe we couldn't get to shows and I'd be upset because I just wanted to be there and help out. Like I did the music, I've reffed, I brought guys gear to the back. I've done every tiny job until I got to this point, and I think it's helped me.
So you were talking about just wanting to be there. I'm going to give you a date, and I want you to tell me if that date means anything to you. You ready for the date?
Yes.
April 17th, 2015. Why is that date important to you?
That's the first day that I went to ECPW.
So that was your first day that you went to ECPW event. Why was that day pivotal for you? Why is that day the reason that we're here today?
So it's actually like a pretty funny story. So I was actually supposed to go to a Northeast Wrestling event that night. It was Matt Hardy and John Morrison in, I think, NFA in their high school.
In Newburgh, New York.
Yes. So that show on like the Wednesday got canceled. And I was super upset because I just was so looking forward for like weeks going to a wrestling show. So my dad looks up if there's any other wrestling shows in town, and he's like, okay, get in the car. It's Friday night that day. He's like, get in the car. I had no idea where we were going, and we pulled up to the Paramus Elks Lodge. And it's just our car and a black and yellow truck. And the first person I saw when I got out of the car was Mike 3D. And I was like, are you a wrestler? And he's like, yes. And then I knew I was at the wrestling show.
So I'm sure you've been to other, well, I'm not that I'm sure, I'm 100% positive that you've been to other pro wrestling events before ECPW. What was it that appealed to you about East Coast Pro Wrestling?
Every month I was in the front row, first seat in the front row every single month. And we would go to, whether it was Paramus or to Ridgefield Park, I was always in the front row at their TV tapings.
I always tell people, buddy, that the most intimate part about pro wrestling on the indies is that usually it's one price, get in, and you can sit wherever you want. You can sit in the front row. So I think that was really important and special that you made sure that you were there early enough so that you can sit into the front row. But let's hop back in the time machine, and I want you to look at one particular moment in time. That moment in time was, when did you decide that you wanted to be a pro wrestler?
When I was in elementary school, I knew I wanted to be a wrestler, but it just was like, didn't know like where you could possibly do it. But once I started going to ECPW shows and then realizing that there's a school, and then once I started helping out, I think by the time I was in 9th grade, it was like set in stone that that's where I was going to go start training.
I never forget the first time that you came up to me. And that's when I came back from my hiatus in wrestling. And then you came to me, you said, hey, what? This I'm using because you were a kid at that time. Hey, one day I want to be a wrestler. And I look at you and I'm like, yeah, okay, kid. And I remember watching you through the years growing up and grow. And then you eventually took it on and you said, I'm 17 and next year I'm going to be 18 and I want to start wrestling school. It was something like that along those lines. And I remember giving you homework. What was the homework I gave you to do? Do you remember?
I think you wanted me to do like 50 squats, 50 push-ups, and 50 sit-ups a day.
Yep, work your way up to that so you can at least be in somewhat of a shape, because that's what they'll make you do in pro wrestling school. And that was my advice for you. And how good were you at doing your homework? I know the answer, but everybody else doesn't. Tell them.
I didn't do too much.
I know you didn't. But hey, you know what? You're still here. You still got the opportunity to have your pro wrestling debut. Not much time has passed since you've graduated high school. Most of your fellow high school graduates went to college after high school. What did you choose to do instead, and why?
So 2 months after I graduated high school, I messaged Gino Caruso and said that I was finally ready to start wrestling school. And I started the day before my 18th birthday.
Do you think that you were properly prepared when you walked into that wrestling school?
I think over the quarantine, I tried my best to get ready for it by going on like short little runs and doing like at-home workouts and stuff like that to try and prepare myself for it.
Looking back at your first day in pro wrestling school, I want to know what was going through your mind. So you got out the car and you walked into the school. You had all the stuff that you needed to get into the ring. What were your thoughts? What were your feelings?
I was just ready to like learn as much as I could. And I wanted to like, going into the school, I was thinking about like moves I wanted to do and all these other things. And then after a few weeks in the school, being in the school, I realized that like you have to learn all this other stuff before you can even think about what your finisher is going to be or doing all these other crazy spots and moves.
What do you think is the most important thing that you had to learn before you started mastering all those spots or crazy moves?
You had to learn timing and the way to really hit the ropes, time yourself to turn at the right moments, the footwork, all that. It's just like little things that you wouldn't think you'd have to do, but it's so important.
Before your first match, you did, like you mentioned, you spent a lot of time doing things in the world of pro wrestling that didn't involve wrestling, such as refereeing, grabbing guys and girls gear, bringing it to the back, music and posters and everything else in between. How did they shape you up for when you finally started wrestling?
I think all of that, by the time I finished doing all of that stuff, I was so comfortable with the people I was around and I knew everyone. So I feel like it wasn't an environment where I wasn't sure if I would be able to like really be with these people. Cause I've known some of these people since I was 11 or 12 years old. Guys like Kenny Bangle and all them, they kind of just like took me in and helped me out as best as they could because I've known them for so long that I felt like it wasn't awkward being with them.
What was the most challenging thing that you had to overcome while you were in the pro wrestling school?
I think it's still going on slightly is like the embarrassment of being like more animated and out there, like trying to like be someone that you're not. You're trying to become the character, but also you have to realize that like you can't overdo it because that's not who you really are. So I feel like finding the perfect mesh is still the hard part for me.
What was the moment in the pro wrestling school at ECPW, East Coast Pro Wrestling, that you felt like you had an aha moment, that where you felt like, man, I'm really starting to get this? What was that moment?
I think I was with you. It had to have been with you because it was the time I think you gave me that choke slam. If you remember that one spot that we looked up on YouTube and I showed it to you and we did it about 4 or 5 times. And the last time we did it, it just like clicked. And I think that was one of the times where I was like, okay, I can start doing different stuff. Like I felt like I was able to go in there and learn different moves and like finally get ready to like perfect my drop kick and do different things that I was kind of nervous about doing, like moves that I was like, oh, I don't know if I can really do these or stuff like that. But now I feel like I can put my body in situations of doing different moves because I'm a little bit more used to the way that it flows.
So I always remember that one ride that we were having back because, you know, to let the secret out, you know, I've taken you around to the pro wrestling school. I've brought you to shows that I've wrestled on just so you can see what it's like and possibly get an opportunity. You know, you most recently wrestled at Pro Wrestling Magic, which is pretty cool. You know, if you ask me, I think that's a great place for you to be. But yes. I never forget that conversation. It wasn't a conversation. It was me yelling at you while we were driving back, and it was, you've got to stop letting people treat you like a punching bag, and you need to come out of your body and come into yourself, because for people that don't know you personally like I do, you're just like this quiet and reserved guy. And when you were in the wrestling ring, I needed you to not be that quiet and reserved guy. You needed to come up out of your shell. And I remember watching your first match, and I said, wow, this guy, one of your first matches at the school before you did your your first actual match in front of people, I went, man, this guy's come along. And I honestly, wholeheartedly believe that you're going to do something in pro wrestling.
Thank you.
So I remember the date we were riding in the car. You were telling me about, your gimmick, your character that you want to be Beautiful Buddy Tomas. Now, explain to everybody who doesn't know who you are, who Beautiful Buddy Tomas is.
I feel like Beautiful Buddy Tomas is a very cocky and arrogant person who thinks that I'm better than 99% of the people that I step in the ring with. And maybe to some people that's not true, but I feel like I'm going to get there at some point, and I just got to keep practicing and get better in the ring and just have more reps.
It's hard to believe when we're sitting here thinking about it now that your first match was May 1st, 2021 in I can never say this place right. Hopatcong, New Jersey, right?
Yes.
And it was against Lucky Leo Alvaro. But if you can go back in time and talk to yourself right before you go out for the first time, what advice would you give yourself?
Soak it in a little bit more. And I think that's something I still don't do. I'm always looking forward to the next show, the next match, and not just enjoy the moment that I'm in. So I feel like every time I go out there, I'm always worried about, okay, well, this show next week or this show tomorrow or, oh, next TV, next this. And just don't enjoy the moment. The 7 or 8 minutes I'm in there, I have to enjoy it more.
I used to be in that same exact mindset as well, too, because for the lack of a better term, I was just happy to be here. And for me to get the opportunity to do what I did, I was excited because I always knew that other things were on the horizon. But now I enjoy every single match. Like when I'm there, I'm in the ring and I'm in the arena, I'm in the building, and I'm there with the fans, and whatever reaction that I want them to have, I try to extract that reaction from them. So yeah, that's definitely good advice to go back and give yourself now in hindsight. Soak it in, enjoy it a little bit, because you only have so many matches in you, and then one day you want to be able to look back at it and say, hey, I enjoyed myself. If WWE, AEW, or another pro wrestling promotion is listening right now, why is Beautiful Buddy Tomas the best person to get an opportunity to be a part of their roster?
I feel like I'm very coachable, and that if they wanted to change me or give me different moves or different ways to wrestle or present my character, I think I would be able to do it very well, or at least the best of my ability. So I think that would kind of help me with them as much as possible.
If you became one of the top earning stars in pro wrestling, what would you do with the money?
I've always wanted to have my own wrestling ring and my own place to put it. So I think if anything, I'd probably buy a house with like a really big barn or shed that I could put a ring in, and I'd want to like train people there or run shows out of my own barn or my own arena. I think that'd be really fun.
But for the people that are listening to us on the podcast, so they can't see what is behind you. So I'm going to tell them what is behind you. On the wall behind you, you have pro wrestling action figures. Explain that.
So ever since I was little, I've always collected wrestling figures. And you've seen the collection.
I have.
There's a lot. And I think since then, I've probably gotten over 100 more. It's just something that I really enjoy. And it's something that one day I want to have a figure of myself. And whether it's Beautiful Buddy Tomas or whatever a promotion would possibly turn me into, I just really want to have at least one professional wrestling figure.
So when did you start collecting pro wrestling figures, and why?
Well, my dad started collecting them back when the LJNs came out in the 80s. So when I was born, I just started getting them for Christmas and holidays. And then once I started watching wrestling, I just kept getting new stuff every now and then, and I haven't stopped buying them.
So besides collecting figures, there's something else that you do with the figures as well too, and I have one. So like, what is it that you and your dad do with the figures?
We make customs of some of our favorite wrestlers, and I've made some for guys from ECPW. So I've made Kenny Bangle, Dan the Man, Corey Dillinger, Prince Akhenaten has one. You have yours, and I've recently made a Beautiful Buddy Tomas one.
Oh, nice. That's pretty cool. So you already got your own action figure?
Yes, but I want an official one.
What is next for Beautiful Buddy Tomas?
I just want to wrestle every weekend, whether it's in Jersey or New York, or if I have to go to like Pennsylvania, I'll go anywhere. I don't care. I just want to wrestle. I've had 30 matches since May, and some weekends I had no matches. Some weekends I had 3. One weekend I had 5. So I just love wrestling, and I just want to keep doing it. So I would take any opportunity I could get in 2022 to wrestle.
Hey, well, I think definitely 2022, everybody always says it's their year, but I think 2022 is going to be one of the years that you look back on and say, wow, that you really made a notch. But, I definitely want to thank you for being here on the Tristen Law Show and hanging out with me today. Tell everybody how they can find you on social media outside of the Tristen Law Show.
So I'm Beautiful Buddy Tomas on Instagram. And then you can find my YouTube, which is Beautiful Buddy Tomas, where you can watch all my matches that are not televised. So any of my non-ECPW televised shows, all my matches should be on there. And I post them the day after I have a match. The match will be up there.
He is a pro wrestler. He's a protege, and he's my really good friend in pro wrestling. So watch out for him. Stay tuned. Beautiful Buddy Tomas is the guy that you're going to want to know.